everyone. How are you this evening? Hi, Seal. Hi, in the bushes. How are you, ladies?
Hello. Hello,
Hi.
hello. Great.
Hi. So, we did not finish watching the Biden speech. We are not going to continue with the Biden speech, though, because there's been like a bunch of more important speeches since then. Have either of you guys watched RFK's dropout speech?
I have not.
About 10 minutes of it, and that was it.
No, that's perfect. So we'll get like realistic feedback from you ladies as you listen to this. We are going to start with this one. If we have time, we're going to check out Kamala. Unfortunately, hoping to hear about the issues, once she uh accepted the nomination for presidency. That's not what happened. She continued to only talk about Trump and, a whole bunch of things. She never even mentioned inflation. It was a sad acceptance speech. Delana's here. Hi, Jay Meister. Hi, BC. Good to see you guys. So we're gonna watch a speech from RFK, and I'm really excited to hear you guys' opinions about this. And so let's just get it going. Let's just
Good.
do this.
Hello. How are you,
I'm
girl?
sorry to keep everybody.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Say hi. I know it's been
I know. I
forever since
haven't
we've
seen
seen
her
her.
in like forever.
Hi, Casey Face. So good to see you too. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play on this.
Waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy.
So right there already, this is kind of what we talked about the other day. Hi, Ocean Tide. This is kind of what we talked about the other day whenever I mentioned, if you guys remember, that to me, he was more like what the Democrats, if you look at his policies and you look at where he aligns himself with different things, that's what I recall the Democratic Party being. I remember whenever I was 18, I registered originally as a Democrat voter. And eventually I changed that to Republican because in PA you have to choose. And so when do you guys think, because you guys are older than me, much older. When do you guys think that the Democratic Party really changed where they stand? I'm curious.
Like, you mean when or where? When they changed?
Yeah, how long ago do you think that the Democratic Party switched from being like this open, um, all of the things that he just described? When do you think that they switched from fighting against, tyranny and wars and censorship and things like that to now they're the quote unquote woke party and we're all tiptoeing on eggshells trying not to offend them and they censor everything, whether it's political or just to protect people's feelings, like they're for censorship, they're all these different things. When do you think that change started to take place?
About 12 years ago.
I'm gonna say it happened when Clinton took office.
Yeah, they changed years ago. I think so too. Ocean Tide, no, I agree with you ladies. Somebody pointed out, the other day I was reading something and they said people who are talking about how things used to be 20 years ago, we have had in the last 16 years Democrats, and only 4 of those years were Republican. And so if you're looking back 20 years thinking, man, wish things were like they were 20 years ago, that's something to consider. The fact that it's been 8 years of Obama, Biden, Trump, right? Yeah, or Trump and then Biden. So we're looking at, out of the last 16 years, only 4 of them have been under Republican rule.
Right. And yet it's his fault that things are the way they are.
Right.
Yeah, that's just I mean, that's just how they see it. I'm like, my God, the poor man. He got hounded and harassed the whole entire time he
Oh,
was
yeah.
in office. And I mean, out of the 16 years, they want to blame everything that's wrong on him. But they're the ones that's been in office the most.
Right. Right. So let me hit play again. I just was curious where your thought processes were as to when they left their party allegiances and kind of started, working against themselves. Honest to goodness. Um, it seems like anybody who is actually keeping up with policies and things like that, people are starting to wake up to what's going on. And I think RFK, those of them who had not waken up, they're going to watch this speech and be like, man, is what he's saying actually true? Like, I think this speech is going to be very impactful for a lot of people.
By canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved. And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong. We did it because beneath the radar of mainstream media organs, we inspired a massive independent political movement. More than 100,000 volunteers sprang into action, hopeful that they could reverse our nation's decline. Many worked 10-hour days, sometimes in blizzards and blazing heat. They sacrificed family time, personal commitments, and sleep month after month, energized by a shared vision of a nation healed of its divisions. They set up tables at churches and farmers markets. They canvassed door to door. In Utah and in New Hampshire, volunteers collected signatures in snowstorms, convincing each supporter to stop in the frigid cold, to take off their gloves, and to sign legibly. During a heat wave in Nevada, I met a tall, athletic volunteer who cheerfully told me that he had lost 25 pounds collecting signatures in 117-degree heat. To finance this effort, young Americans donated their lunch money, and senior citizens gave up part of their Social Security checks. Our 50-state organization collected those millions of signatures and more. No presidential campaign in American political history has ever done that. And so I want to thank all of those dedicated volunteers and congratulate the campaign staff who coordinated this enormous logistical feat. Your accomplishments were regarded as impossible. You carried me up that glass mountain. You pulled off a miracle. You achieved what all the pundits said could never be done. You have my deepest gratitude, and I'm never going to forget that, not just for what you did for my campaign, but for the sacrifices you made because you love our country. You showed everyone that democracy is still possible here. It continues to survive in the press and in the idealistic human energies that still thrive beneath a canvas of neglect and of official and institutional corruption. Today, I'm here to tell you that I will not allow your efforts to go to waste. I'm here to tell you that I will leverage your tremendous accomplishments to serve the ideals that we share, the ideals of peace, of prosperity, of freedom, of health, all the ideals that motivated my campaign. I'm here today to describe the path forward that you have opened with your commitment and with your hard labors. Now, in an honest system, I believe that I would have won the election. In a system that my father and my uncles thrived in, a system with open debates, with fair primaries with regularly scheduled debate, with fair primaries, and with a truly independent media untainted by government propaganda and censorship. In a system of nonpartisan courts and election boards, everything would be different. After all, the polls consistently showed me beating each of the other candidates, both in favorability and also in head-to-head matchups. But I'm sorry to say that while democracy may still be alive at the grassroots, it has become little more than a slogan for our political institutions, for our media, and for our government, and most sadly at all for me, the Democratic Party. In the name of saving democracy, the Democratic Party set itself to dismantling it, lacking confidence in its candidate, that its candidate could win in a fair election at the voting booth. The DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself. Each time that our volunteers turned in those towering boxes of signatures needed to get on the ballot, the DNC dragged us into court, state after state, attempting to erase their work and to subvert the will of the voters who had signed those petitions. It deployed DNC-aligned judges to throw me and other candidates off the ballot and to throw President Trump in jail. It ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose when they don't know whom they are choosing? And how can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my uncle were always conscious of America's image abroad because of our nation's role as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors.
So I'm gonna stop right there. And I want to know, like he put out a lot of stuff in that last 5 minutes that it's it's really something to chew on. I mean, he's making a lot of allegations in what he said. I mean, he's saying, they rigged the primary against me to put Biden in and to not give anyone else a fair shot at beating him out in the primaries. I personally think that that's probably true because they have set who they can control essentially. And I'm going to guess that they can't control RFK. And then you go from that to he talked about how then they put Harris in his place once he realized once they couldn't hide Biden's inability to actually do anything anymore. So then they put Harris in his place. They didn't let a vote happen for her. And the media who was talking about how she was the worst vice president in history, how she had done nothing, completely flipped on its head. And now she's the best possible candidate ever because she has a vagina and she has darker skin than everybody else. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Did anybody miss anything there?
No, I got it.
Mhm.
I like this guy. I really did. And
Yeah, I wish that he would have like switched from like I almost wished he would have been running as almost a Republican because I think that him and Trump together on a ticket would have been amazing.
It would have been.
I think so, definitely. Um, I do like him a lot. I do. I like that he speaks so boldly. He doesn't come across threatening or anything, but he just speaks real confident and he's bold in what he says. And I like him.
Yeah,
I
yeah, for
wish
sure.
he could have
He's
been.
afraid to
They
call
should
it
have.
out.
I wish they would have let him be, or he would have stayed on the ticket.
Well, and so he was running as an independent, and he goes into this a little bit more, but you heard him talk about, the millions of vote or of signatures that he had to get to even be on the ticket in some of these states. And
Mhm.
he was put onto their ballots. He got the signatures. His campaign was able to acquire all of the signatures that they needed to run in these states. And then as soon as they turned them in, the Democratic Party started tying them up in litigation absolutely everywhere.
Yep.
So, thus, that litigation, of course, is going to take longer than November to work itself out, and so they have tied him up to where even though he was supposed to be able to be on these ballots, that he wasn't going to be on them. And then he was worried that the states that he was going to be put on the ballot, that he would just oppose Trump, but not have enough electoral votes at the end of the day because of the litigation in the other states. And so that's kind of where we're at with this. Yeah, RFK is going to be part of Trump's team. So they have they have transitioned to him and Trump have been talking, and they're supposed to be going in together. He's going to let RFK run different parts of his cabinet from what I understand. So
That'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah,
That would be
Did
great.
I think I read, I'm trying to think of the department. It has to do with um the Department
yeah.
of Human Services is what
Mhm.
I read that he could possibly be over, which would be great because he really has a heart for kids too.
Right.
If I sound
Um,
odd, y'all can y'all hear me clear? Y'all are so
you sound fine.
scratchy.
You
You're
sound
very
absolutely
clear.
fine.
Oh,
Mm.
good. Crystal clear.
Crystal
Crystal
clear.
clear.
You are A-okay. And Casey Face, I agree. Those are two terrible reasons to vote for somebody to be your president. We should be voting on policy, not gender or skin color. I think the other thing that's important is, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for even saying this, but um, we have a party who doesn't want us to label people by their genders and wants to say that anybody can be a woman if they put their mind to it. Uh, you know, is pushing for the first woman president. And to me, that's kind of like very hypocritical. Um,
Yeah.
because I guess if Trump were to label himself a woman for the election, like what if he were like, and now I identify as a woman? You know what I mean? Would they then be like, "Oh, well, we should vote for him because he's gonna be the first trans, president," or I don't know. And not to make light of people and their gender identifiers and things like that. I just think it's very, very ironic, um,
Mhm.
that that's the people that we're looking at that are so worried about gender. They're so worried about gender and they're so worried about race, and then at the same time, they're also telling us that we shouldn't be identified by our genders and our race. And I don't know. I'm very confused. So let me just hit the play button before I get myself in trouble.
And balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a
147 times on the first day of the DNC, they said Donald Trump's name. By the fourth day, they had said his name 400 times. But while they had said his name 400 times, they had only um, they had only said inflation. I believe it was 12 times. I'm going to have to look up the exact number. But in 4 days, none of them talked about the inflation. None of them really talked about the border. None of them talked about the things that are mattering. All they really cared about was Trump this, Trump that. It's very, very sad because they are running their entire campaign,
On hate.
everything. Yes, it's all on hate. And this is, I guess, this is what's caught my interest in all of this, because that's how you grow a YouTube channel.
Exactly.
Like, seriously. Like they are using or is YouTube using what they're watching in politics? But the people on this platform who just sit there and hate one channel or hate the other channel or whatever and spew hate and garbage, that's the channels that are growing. And I guess that they have the same motto in politics, because all you got to do is hate Trump and provide people with fictitious reasons to hate Trump, and then that's good. We're good. Nothing else needs to be done. And I think that's why this has piqued my interest so much, because I want to know more about the human mind and why people are so driven with so much hatred in their hearts.
That's just sad. It really is. That's just a sad state of our country if you think about it. I mean, if you're more driven by hate and just kind of joining in the whole hate mob, I mean, I think it's that. You know, there's just so many people involved in it, and they just want to jump on that train.
Yeah. Yeah, like we need God back in our hearts so
Good
much. It's
Lord,
not
we
even
do.
funny. And and it terrifies me that we've gotten to this point.
Yeah, it's not a good look for our country. It hasn't been for quite some time.
Right.
No, all these other countries think that we're so arrogant.
Sad. Sad, sad, sad.
It is.
Policy when you have Trump to hate. In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies. When a US president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech, it's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression. And that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks exposed themselves as Democratic Party organs over the course of more than a year in a campaign where my poll numbers reached at times in the high 20s. The DNC-led mainstream media networks maintain a near perfect embargo on interviews with me. During his 10-month presidential campaign in 1992, Ross Perot gave 34 interviews on mainstream networks. In contrast, during the 16 months since I declared, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined gave only 2 live interviews from me. Those networks instead ran a continuous deluge of hit pieces with inaccurate, often vile, pejoratives and defamatory smears. Some of those same networks and colluded with the DNC to keep me off the debate stage. Representatives of those networks are in this room right now, and I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Instead of maintaining that posture of fierce skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it. The Democratic Party's censorship of social media was even more of a naked exercise of executive power. This week, a federal judge, Terry Doty, upheld my injunction against President Biden, calling the White House's censorship project, quote, the most egregious violation of the First Amendment in the history of the United States of America. Odie's previous 155-page decision details how just 37 hours after he took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution, President Biden and his White House opened up a portal and then invited the CIA, the FBI, CISA, which is a censorship agency, it's the center of the censorship industrial complex, DHS, the IRS, and other agencies to censor me and other political dissidents on social media. Even today, users who try to post my campaign videos to Facebook or YouTube get messages that this content violates community standards. 2 days after Judge Odie rendered his decision this week, Facebook was still attaching warning labels to an online petition calling on ABC to include me in the upcoming debate. They said that violates community standards, their community standards.
Oh, and Missy has it right. So, and now they're trying to control social media. So I have a whole rabbit hole theory here. We have heard that the DNC has been trying to pay $10,000 to different users on Twitch, on TikTok, on these different platforms to support their campaign, to support Kamala Harris. And the ones that they can't pay off, we're watching get copyright strikes. We're watching them get community guidelines violations. We're watching them, do all
Oh,
these things. And
yeah,
so you think
yeah.
about the
I
fact
mean,
that
they need to
Musk,
start issuing out treason charges.
yeah,
And some of that's going to be to the very politicians running.
I
And I'm
agree
not
with
even
that
for election interference. And Trump called it out last time and nobody believed him. But this has been going on a very long time.
for
It's
sure.
been going on a
For
very,
sure.
very long time.
And I think that we're in a situation though where so you look at the mainstream media, and he said, they only gave him 2 interviews, and then after that they were constantly smearing him in all of these different news articles and things like that. Well, if I were to ask my aunt today, who is very, very left, what she thought about RFK, it would not be nice things coming out of her mouth. And like I said, to me, if you read his policies versus Kamala's, he's the more Democratic candidate that she would normally support. But she's been so brainwashed by the liberal media that I don't think she even knows what's up and what's down anymore. But I think the same thing happens, let me be clear, on the right wing side of things. And so I think it's so, so important for everybody to do your own research, to make sure that you're using search engines that are not blocking things whenever you attempt to do that research. Because guess what? Google shadow bans a lot of things. Many, many things that you are trying to look up will be shadow banned by Google if you actually try to dig into these different candidates and see, so that you can make an open and informed decision on who you're going to vote with or vote for. And I'm not here to tell you necessarily to vote for Trump or to change, well, or to, I guess, to force your hand in that regards. More what I want to do is look at these situations and look at these candidates and see like where they actually stand. The issue is I can't do that with Kamala because Kamala hasn't told us where she stands on anything so far. So,
No, she hasn't. But Biden will tell you where she stands. I don't know when he was speaking for her the other night,
mhm,
which was so I don't know, it's just kind of strange to me because he was kind of clear and coherent. And I mean, I don't mean that to be funny or ugly, but he really was very clear and coherent, more so than he has been in the past. And but he told you exactly where she stands, but she doesn't say where she stands. She hasn't said anything about her platform, what she's running on, or anything. She's
right?
got all these other people speaking for her because she don't know what she's running for. That's
She
my
doesn't
opinion.
have a clue. I mean, she is so not fit for the job. And it
Yeah,
scares me that that's who's running.
right. And so, Casey mentioned that she watches a lot of news from other countries. one of the things that I follow is Sky News Australia. They are laughing at us. I
Yeah.
mean, they think we're idiots.
Yeah.
The world thinks that we are idiots right now, watching us do all this stupidity. Right? Show what ABC won't on Gaza culture shocks. The verge on communism, what the US could look like. Oh, where's it at? I can't pop it up. Under President Kamala Harris. Kamala's border record exposed. What? Why isn't America News doing this? Not just on Kamala, but on Trump too. Right? This is what like, when did
Because there
journalism
isn't freedom of
become
press
so sold
anymore.
out? Right.
They have
When did they
become
sell out?
monopolies. Other corporations have bought them, all of the press, and now other people are pulling the strings and running the show.
So I
There
have
is
a
no
theory
free
too, though.
press.
Remember how they were doing this whole ban on TikTok? And like, if you have a government phone in the United States, if you have a Obama phone, that phone cannot download TikTok. Did you guys know that? They've
Yeah.
banned it on all government phones, on government employees are also not supposed to utilize TikTok, right? Completely banned. You know what's going on TikTok right now against Kamala Harris? I think
No.
that they were banning TikTok, and I think it has less to do with Chinese watching us through there, because guess what? They watch us through everything, and more to do with how quickly social media influencers can grow off of little tiny short bits of truth. And I seen that with myself over this past week. I uploaded a 7-second video to TikTok on this missing woman that I'm covering. And the 7-second video, let me just look real quick because I'm not sure where it's at right now. Okay, there's 3 different videos that I did. The one has 419,000 views in 4 days.
Wow.
4 days. The other 2, one is at 140,000 and one is at 110,000 views.
Wow.
And I think what's happening is they were trying to ban TikTok because that's a huge platform that teenagers, these 18 to 25-year-olds, these people. So I found out that the Nepali community is mostly on TikTok. They're not really on YouTube.
That is correct.
And so that's where they're at. Instagram, same way. My Instagram views blew up throughout the roof.
PC.
What'd she say?
Nothing. I was like, she was just sent.
She was sending a commercial for Harris. Sorry about that. Let me just.
There
I'm
is
gonna turn
also
that off.
less censorship on TikTok.
Yeah.
There's like no censorship on TikTok.
YouTube is killing their platform.
Yeah, they are. So then the other side of things for like Rumble, you look at Rumble, people are starting to go over there to grow. Well, what's happening on Rumble right now? A whole lot of political stuff, and trying to I just feel like they're trying to control, though, which areas are promoted, and which side of the story. They want you only watching mainstream news. And so then you end up with, okay, so who is only watching mainstream news? Well, you got like that 50 to, I would say, 80-year-old crowd, the lonely housewives with their cats. Like, I don't know. I'm not
Cat
saying that they're
ladies.
the only ones, but I'm just saying there is a lot of you first had thought that I was playing something. No. But I think my biggest issue is with this, that the whenever people are being interviewed and asked who they're voting for and why, the biggest answer is a non-answer. They don't know. They don't know who or why they're voting. And that bothers me. At least know who you're voting for and be able to stand on it and be able to name real reasons. You don't do Rumble. Yeah, that's okay. I have Rumble so that it uploads my videos there after I'm done being live, but apparently that stopped working like 6 months ago, and I didn't notice, and I signed on to it the other day just to see, like, how my channel was doing and stuff like that, and I realized that nothing had been uploaded for, like, 6 months. I
Oh,
was like,
They
wow.
don't want you on there.
"Yeah, maybe." But so I started, like, manually uploading a couple videos, but then that's, like, a pain in the butt, and it's a whole it's okay whenever it was automatic, but I'm lazy. So anyways, let me hit play. Let's see what's next.
Um, the mainstream media was once the guardian of the First Amendment and democratic principles, and has joined this systemic attack on democracy. It also, the media justifies their censorship on the grounds of combating misinformation, but governments and oppressors don't censor lies. They don't fear lies. They fear the truth, and that's what they censor. And I don't want any of this to sound like a personal complaint, because it's not. For me, it's all part of a journey, and it's a journey that I signed up with. But I need to make these observations because I think they're critical for us doing the thing that we need to do as citizens in a democracy to assess where we are in this country and what our democracy still looks like, and the assumptions about U.S. leadership around the globe. And are we living up? Are we really still a role model for democracy in this country? Or have we made it, a kind of a joke? Here's the good news. While mainstream outlets denied me a critical platform, they didn't shut down my ideas, which have especially flourished among young voters and independent voters, thanks to the alternative media. Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless systematic censorship and media control. So I cannot in good conscience ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed that by staying on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats, with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name, my name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election. But in about 10 battleground states where my presence would be a spoiler, I'm going to remove my name. And I've already started that process and urge voters not to vote for me. It's with a sense of victory and not defeat that I'm suspending my campaign activities. Not only did we do the impossible by collecting 1 million signatures, we changed the national political conversation forever. Chronic disease, free speech, government corruption, breaking our addiction to war have moved to the center of politics. I can say to all who have worked so hard the last year and a half, thank you for a job well done. 3 great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, a war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. I've already described some of my personal experiences and struggles with the government's censorship industrial complex. I want to say a word about the Ukraine war. The military industrial complex has provided us with a familiar comic book justification, like they do on every war, that this one is a noble effort to stop a supervillain, Vladimir Putin, invading the Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe. In fact, tiny Ukraine is a proxy in a geopolitical struggle initiated by the ambitions of the US neocons or American global hegemony. I'm not excusing Putin for invading Ukraine. He had other options. But the war is Russia's predictable response to the reckless neocon project of extending NATO to encircle Russia, a hostile act. The credulous media rarely explain to Americans that we unilaterally walked away from 2 intermediate nuclear weapons treaties with Russia and then put nuclear-ready Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland. This is a hostile act. And that the Biden White House repeatedly spurned Russia's offer to settle this war peacefully. The Ukraine war began in 2014 when U.S. agencies overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine and installed a hand-picked pro-Western government that launched a deadly civil war against ethnic Russians in Ukraine. In 2019, America walked away from a peace treaty, the Minsk Agreement, that had been negotiated between Russia and Ukraine by European nations. And then in April of 2022, we wanted the war. In April of 2022, President Biden sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine to force President Zelensky to tear up a peace agreement that he and the Russians had already signed, and the Russians were withdrawing troops from Kiev and Donbass and Lugansk. And that peace agreement would have brought peace to the region and would have allowed Donbass and Lugansk to remain part of Ukraine. President Biden stated that month that his objective in the war was regime change in Russia. His Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, simultaneously explained that America's purpose in the war was to exhaust the Russian army, to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. These objectives, of course, have nothing to do with what they were telling Americans about protecting Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukraine is a victim in this war, and it's a victim of the West. Since then, of Russia and both Russia and the West. Since then, since tearing up that agreement, forcing Zelensky to tear up the agreement, we've squandered the flower of Ukrainian youth, as many as 600,000 Ukrainian kids and over 100,000 Russian kids, all of whom we should be mourning, have died, and the Ukraine's infrastructure is destroyed. The war has been a disaster for our country as well. We squandered nearly $200 million already, and these are badly needed dollars in our communities, suffering communities all over our country. The Nord Stream pipeline sabotage and the
I'm going to stop right there because Bushes, I know that you are passionate about Ukraine, and that's something that you've been kind of following pretty
Oh,
closely.
every day, every
What
day.
what are
One of
your
my
thoughts on
friends
what he
was the
said?
first American killed.
That's
He was a
sad.
reporter, and he's dead. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't know how I feel about what he's saying. Um, maybe there could have been peace. Maybe, I don't know. Um, I know that Putin seems to renege on things and change his mind quite often. And I don't know what the agreement was and why Ukraine would want to back out of it.
Yeah, like what did Biden try to sell them, or our country try to sell them for the reason that they ripped up this peace agreement, so to say, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I don't know the details, so I can't confirm what he's saying or not because I never saw the agreement. I never heard what
Mhm.
it said. I don't know the details. I can tell you that the Ukraine's kicking ass right now, though. They have gone into Russia. They are now on Russian soil. They have taken over a good chunk, although I doubt Putin is going to want to negotiate with them. They managed to get some drones up and blow up 4 or 5 power plants in Russia, across Russia, major ones. Um, they actually did a lot of things. They took out several of the airbase strips. So, yeah, they're actually holding their own. And I don't think that's because the US helped. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I believe it's another country helping them more than us. I mean, we're giving them weapons, yes.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, my state has benefited greatly um, from the war because we're supplying ammunitions to Ukraine and Israel. Our
Yeah.
factories are going double time.
They say that
Um,
wars are always banker wars. Always. For
always.
there's always a reason behind it. And so
Well, I
if
can't say
if
there's
it's
always a
helping,
reason behind it, but I can tell you one thing. They're always there to be sure to profit. But here's the thing with the war in Israel, we're funding it two-sided because we keep sending money over to Afghanistan, which in turn gives it to Iran, which in turns turns around and gives it to Hezbollah,
right,
and Hamas. And it's a never ending cycle, but yet we're giving Israel all this money to fight it. And it is in our interest to fight it because those people that want to hurt them want to come over and hurt us. I mean, if you can see what's going on
Exactly.
across Europe, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Um, it's it's insane what's going on across Europe right now.
yeah,
So, I mean, it kind of takes light off what's going on with Ukraine, and Ukraine kind of fell by the wayside when it came to the press, and people really aren't keeping up with it. I mean, I heard about negotiations, but I don't know what would have caused them to back out. But I'm gonna say they backed out because Russia wasn't gonna give them their land back, including Crimea, which they took over in 2014. That was the first time they went into Ukraine and started stealing land.
right. And so
And the
if you
whole
think about,
time,
God,
Ukraine kept trying to negotiate and work with them.
so if you think about this, so Ukraine currently has 2.2 million military personnel as of 2024. I think he said 600,000 had died.
Children, yes.
So I think the 600,000 must have been including everybody because I'm seeing, so as of February, so obviously that's 6 months ago, there were 30,457 civilians killed.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Russia went in cutthroat. They went in cutthroat. My God, they hit villages and just rounded up everybody and shot them.
Hmm.
Even, they had them rounding up their dead too, and people who weren't dead, they wouldn't get a medical. They just shot them if they were injured. They were
It's
literally shooting
disgusting.
their own.
Yeah.
Now
And then,
they're promising citizenship to immigrants if they'll come there, and then they grab them and go, guess what? You're enlisted, you're drafted, go fight. So they're getting all these immigrants to go fight for them right now because they're out of men.
Is that Jax?
so if you think about the fact that if Biden really did this to put a to take out of some of Russia's forces, their troops currently, the Russian armed forces, as of May, has 3.57 million troops. Compared to the United States, we currently have 2,079,000. So, do you think that's a thing that they could have, you know, maybe Biden's like, "Hey, your army's getting too big and we need to put, you guys need to thin that out a little bit. So we'll just start a war over here in this area and it'll be perfectly fine because it's not our country."
I don't know why we get involved in other wars anyway, honestly. I really
Well,
don't.
the Ukraine asked us for help, and we needed to help them, but we didn't give them the kind of help that they needed. I mean, sure, the weapons helped, they did, but here's the thing. It just wasn't the Ukraine where he wanted to stop.
Mhm.
He wanted to keep going.
let's talk about, he mentioned the social media blackout on things that the DNC doesn't want to be criticized about, or that they're trying to hide. Well, how about Ukraine is one of those things? You
Yeah.
can't make a video about Ukraine on YouTube. You can't post about it on Facebook. You cannot talk about Ukraine. And I would not be shocked if this video like loses monetization and gets pulled and things like that, just because of how many times we've said the word Ukraine.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of crazy to me because if you support this war and you're okay with sending finances there, you're okay with sending soldiers there, you're okay with the genocide that's going on between the two countries, and the hundreds of thousands of lives lost, then why not allow it to be discussed? Why
Because
hide it?
it's a front. It's a flat out front because Russia, North Korea, China, and Iran are all buddies and they're all doing land grabs. Well, North Korea is not, but they
Mm,
are working on the missiles.
yeah,
But everybody else is trying for land grabs right now. So, yeah, they're all land grabbing.
yeah,
Um, and they're all in it together. And one can't really call out the other now, can they?
right.
China can frown at Russia, but still they're going after Taiwan. You know, they're trying to claim Taiwan as their
Oh, that's right.
territory.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Iran is trying to help people take over Israel.
Right.
They want it out of there.
Hmm.
Um, land grabbing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna hit play again. Seal, you have any thoughts?
I have a question that doesn't have anything to do with what we were just talking about, though,
Hmm.
because I've been hearing a lot of it. So it's in the DNC, it's in Kamala's campaign, and I saw it in chat just now. So I'm just really curious. When people say we're not going back to what? What do
So
they
that's
mean?
So that's a Kamala statement. That's one of those things that Kamala and Biden have been saying. They are trying to imply, and have been implying, I guess I should say, that whenever Trump says "Make America Great Again," that the "again" is implying that we need to go back to whenever there was slavery, and whenever there was no free rights for women, and whenever there was no, freedom of expression, and whenever like gays weren't accepted, and like, so they're trying to imply that, that they're not going back to when people had to live in oppression, and that by electing Trump, in the 4 years, let's keep in mind that he's only going to be in there for 4 years. He's still going to have to go against the House the and the Senate whenever it comes right down to it. But anyway, so he couldn't even do all of those things even if he wanted to. But that's what
Wait,
they're implying. They're implying that by voting for Trump, that you are going backwards in all of the civil right movements that have happened since, and that Trump is implying that we need to go back to when America was great in the 20s or whatever. But what
oh
Trump
my
means
God.
whenever he says "Make America Great Again," he is talking about, whenever we used to manufacture things, or whenever we relied on Americans to do things instead of
When
selling our
people
country
had
out
enough
to everyone
jobs.
Right.
else. Yeah, yeah. So that's what it comes down to, and that's something that I know and understand because my brother is constantly, talking about how, um because even with my religion, I am a Baptist, and so every time that you talk about being a Baptist with my brother, because in a typical Baptist family, the way that things are viewed inside of a relationship is that my husband is the head of the family, and that I'm more of a caretaker taker type role. Um, my brother is always like, "Oh, you have to wait on him," and different, but it's just not how it works. You
Right.
guys, like, that's not what that means. And so it just, yeah, it's just the way that they're trying to make it seem like you're going back to this oppressed state somehow. Um,
Even if there's just no way you could go back. You know what I mean? There's no
right.
way that it would
Well, and
ever go
especially
back
not
today.
in 4 years. Could you imagine, trying to do that within 4 years to try to if you think about what they're trying to imply, like, to slavery and to women not having rights and to all of these different things that they try to imply whenever they're saying that, could you imagine what he would have to do in order to make all of those things come true?
Yeah, and he'd have to have, like, full cooperation from the whole government up there, and I so I don't see any of that happening. I
Right.
mean, I think it's just kinda silly. We're not going back. Well, no, no, we're not going back.
Nobody would agree to go back. I mean, and so that was another thing, like, especially, so we'll get into Project 2025, Casey, for sure, because that's something, but this is something we're going to be covering for a long time, and we won't have time for everything tonight. But Project 2025 is not a Trump policy. This
No,
has been
it's
something that
not.
has been around since the Reagan era, and they keep trying to say that this is his. Trump's agenda is agenda 44, 40, 45, agenda 45 or whatever is what he calls his thing. It has nothing to do with Project 2025. And so it's just the media. It's just the media and how they lie to people and try to twist things. And, like, if you're going to battle against someone, and if you're going to have a fight and you're going to do this, then do it fair. Like, fight with facts. Kamala, you come out here and tell me why I should vote for you and the policies that are important so that I can know, because I am typically more middle of the road. Like I said, I very well could have voted for RFK, honest to goodness, because his policies line up more with what Democrats used to be. And that's the party that I started out at. I voted for Biden, or not Biden. I voted for Obama. I voted for Obama the first time that he ran. I was in that party. And so it's amazing to me to, like, see how far it's come from everything in the last 16 years. It's not Democrat versus Republican, it's freedom versus no freedom.
Exactly.
I don't even I don't even know if I necessarily agree with that statement, though, because in reality, both party lines try to control people with just fear, right? The right wings try to say, like, oh, they're destroying our democracy and blah blah blah, and then the left wings try to say the same thing, and oh, it's somewhere in the middle, but I don't think it comes quite to this extreme. Now, do I think that we're going to be in a situation, um, where we're going to be very, very close, to what Venezuela did to themselves? Absolutely. Like, if Kamala, the couple of statements that she said about pricing and the different types of capital gains taxes and unrealized capital gains taxes and all of those different things that I've heard come
Yeah,
out of her mouth so far, that terrifies me. Like, you're
yeah.
going to tax me on money that I don't even have yet? Like, that's not okay. And so I don't know. We'll get into that more, though. Let me hit play before I get too far gone.
Sanctions have destroyed Europe's industrial base, which formed the bulwark of US national security. A strong Germany with a strong industry is a much, much stronger deterrent to Russia, and a Germany that is deindustrialized and turned into just an extension of a US military base. We've pushed Russia into a disastrous alliance with China and Iran. We're closer to the brink of nuclear exchange than at any time since 1962. And the neocons in the White House don't seem to care at all. Our moral authority and our economy are in shambles. And the war gave rise to the emergence of BRICS, which now threatens to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency. This is a first-class calamity for our country. Judging by her bellicose, belligerent speech last night in Chicago, we can assume that President Harris will be an enthusiastic advocate for this and other neocon military adventures. And President Trump says that he will reopen negotiations with President Putin and end the war overnight as soon as he becomes president. This alone would justify my support for his campaign. Last summer, it looked like no candidate was willing to negotiate a quick end to the Ukraine war, to tackle chronic disease epidemic, to protect free speech, our constitutional freedoms, to clean corporate influence out of our government, or to defy the neocons and their agenda of endless military adventurism. But now one of the two candidates has adopted these issues as his own, to the point where he has asked to enlist me in his administration. I'm speaking, of course, of Donald Trump. Less than 2 hours after President Trump narrowly escaped assassination, Callie Means called me on my cell phone. I was then in Las Vegas. Callie is arguably the leading advocate for food safety, for soil regeneration, and for ending the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying America's health and ruining our economy. Callie has exposed the insidious corruption at the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day. A few weeks later, I met again with President Trump and his family members and closest advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ, while working together on the existential issues upon which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. But we are aligned with each other on other key issues like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemic, securing the border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the US intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans and interfering with our elections. Following my first discussion with President Trump,
I think they're going to try to kill both of them before this election.
I really like this guy a lot.
I agree, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot. I really do.
Everything he just said is all things that need to happen. The question is, will they let this? Will they really let the corporate world, all these people with money who love controlling all of the three-letter agencies, do you really think they're going to let these people get elected?
No.
I mean, it's a terrifying thought. Whenever you think about it, the FBI, the CIA, the all of those food FDAs and all the three-letter agencies, if they're all for hire. Mm, mm.
I'm going to tell you something funny. Not funny, but I have a cousin who, my whole family is into politics big time. They really are. But I have a cousin. While Kamala was giving her speech, she had posted on Facebook. He said, and she said, talking about Kamala, said, "Enjoy your moment. Tomorrow they will release the Kraken." And everybody was like, what? And I'm like, so today, well, or the next day, whenever RFK came out, I said, I believe the Kraken's been released. 'Cause that's who I think she was talking about, though.
Mhm.
Because he really is. He's really opening my eyes to a lot of things. I'm impressed with him.
Yeah. And imagine if they would have let him actually be the Democratic nominee.
Oh my
You
gosh,
think
yeah.
about the fact I've asked myself this the last couple elections that we've had. I've been like, seriously, like they have nobody that can run against, like nobody was better than Biden. That's who you put on the primaries, like Biden and like a bunch of nobodies. Like nobody was better than that. And now we got Kamala. Like you implanted Kamala into there. There was nobody in your entire side of the party. There was nobody better than that.
Well,
Is it
these
that,
two
or
can
there was
be
nobody else that they owned?
right. They
That's the
can be
problem.
controlled. These two
Right,
can be controlled. Kamala is going to be, and that's kind of an insult to a woman. I'm honestly, the only reason they're doing it is because she is a woman and she can be controlled because, you got other people that's actually running the country besides the president.
right. And that's a scary thought. So if you stop and think about it, the Republicans don't like Donald Trump any more than the Democrats liked RFK. And so why is it that these parties want these people in place that are so easily controlled? Why don't we see Republican House and Senate and things like that standing up against all of this stuff as well? Like how many times on the news lately have you seen anybody attacking what's going on with with Biden and Harris right now? Why isn't there an outcry happening from the Republican Party whenever they put Harris in? You see one or two, but there's not like there should be.
No, and if there
There
was, we
isn't
wouldn't
anybody.
see it.
Well, right. So is it the fact that the media is silencing all of them and they're just choosing not to air interviews with them or not to do interviews with them? Or is it the fact that most of the Republican Party is just as bought and sold as the Democrat Party? No. But yeah, Casey, same thing. You were just thinking, why isn't he Trump's running mate? I like him. It would be nice if the vice president, if somebody's running mate was a little bit opposite on opinions, because then you got options. They can sit there and debate and discuss. I love it so much better whenever I don't have people that just agree with me on everything. And that's why I love In the Bushes, right? Could you imagine if we were constantly butt heads, but it would be productive, right? Because then you think outside of the box and you learn different ways to do things while you're sitting there arguing about what would be good and what wouldn't. And so RFK and Trump, they would have been unstoppable, in my opinion, if they ran the country together. I don't know enough about Vance. I'm going to be honest about that. Outside of what I've seen recently from him, I don't know enough about him. But
Okay, about Vance,
mhm.
if you go on Netflix, there's a documentary
Good
that
lord,
they made before
I know he was
before
really anti-Trump.
yeah. Well, it's not really about the politics. It's about his childhood and where he came from. And
Not the movie, but not the movie, the documentary, right? Because he did the
uh,
Hillbilly Elegy, isn't that it?
yep,
Yeah.
that's it.
When someone
Um,
shows you who they are, believe them. Here he is telling his followers he is the snake in the poem he recites right out in the open. I don't understand what
I
you
don't
mean
either.
exactly there. Sorry, but go ahead. Go ahead, Seal.
Oh, Vance. I mean, he had a terrible, terrible childhood. He really did. It was really rough, and but he pulled himself up out of all that. I mean, he instead of
He pulled
you,
himself up out of all that and it made him mean and he went to Washington.
yeah, he really did. He's pretty determined, and I think it's amazing that he didn't live in what he was brought up in. He decided he wanted something better at a young age too. So I mean,
Yeah.
he's just been he wanted better, and he wanted a better life for him. He wanted a better country to live in, and no, he wasn't all about Trump there, but something changed his mind.
Yeah. I think that sometimes people I think it's okay to change your mind. I think it's okay to change your
It's
background
absolutely okay to
and
change
to
your mind.
like, but I think that there are certain situations where, it's possible. That's why I try not to harp too much on people's necessarily even their voting history and things like that. Because if you were to look at my voting history and things that I probably would have agreed with 10 years ago versus now, it probably would have changed for me too. You know what I mean? And I think that we've gotten so focused on throwing people's mistakes in their faces, or even like Linus said, Vance has a lot of evil friends. I mean, if you were to sit me down and look at my list of people that probably refer to me as friends or that I have associated with in the past or things like that, you might think, holy crap, Sleuth Mom is friends with a lot of evil people. But am I necessarily, being polite to somebody in public, or having that public appearance or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with them behind closed doors, or that we're friendly. You know what I mean? There are people that I consider friends that speak very, very ill of me. And
Right?
we would be perceived as friends up until just a few months ago. And so does that mean that they still support me and still agree with me? No, sure doesn't. But yeah, Casey, I think that politics used to be that way, right? Well, like the whole point of the House and the Senate and having those mixed parties in there were so that they could all figure stuff out together and bounce ideas off of each other and try to figure out the right way
Yeah,
for the
they
American
don't get
people.
anything done anymore. They're
They do
too
nothing
busy
anymore.
fighting over elections and election money to focus on the people. I mean, it's like everything they pass in legislation is about a dirty business deal that happened behind it, you know?
Right. Right. And then you've got like every time that anything is getting voted on, right? Anytime anything is getting voted on, if the Republicans presented it, well, you better not be a Democrat and support it. And if the Democrats presented it, oh, the Republican better not cross party lines and support that bill. And it's like, come on, guys, aren't you supposed to be like figuring this out together and then doing bipartisan bills where you can work on it together and both agree on different things? Like where did we stop doing that? Where did the parties only start being so one-sided, I guess, to where people can't have differences?
The
Like, and
80s.
is that, oh man, it's disgusting to me because there are a lot of things that happen. Like I say, I'm a Republican currently. Um, but I do lean towards the middle. And there are some things that Democrats say and do that I'm like, well, maybe not now, but in previous years, if RFK was a Democrat still, I would say that some of the policies that he talks about and things that he presents, I'm like, no, I could get down with that. I could see working on making that right for everyone. Um, and so I don't know. The fact though that RFK does stand for children and children's rights and different things like that. I mean, God, you guys know how important that is for me. I talk about that so often whenever we talk about these little kid cases.
Yeah.
So often. The more you see Vance speak, the more you like him. I don't know him well yet. Yeah, you saw him on an interview with CNN, and the interviewer was getting mad, and he sat there and kept his cool. She didn't like it at all. I have seen him straight up destroy some of these interviewers lately. And they try to trip him up. They try to make him say stupid things, stuff like that, and he just completely destroys them. And I don't know, I go back to I wish that I was able to see and say the same thing about Kamala or about Waltz. Is it Waltz or Walls? But I can't. And then we have people in our community that live in the state that the Walls guys from that are like, listen, it's terrible here. Do not support that guy. I will not support that guy. And it's like if people from his own town are saying that, like, I don't know. You said when when Clinton said I did not have relations with that woman, people started to divide. Depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Anyways, What do you think about, all the things?
Mm,
You just want me to hit play? I'll hit
I
play.
think, yeah, hit play.
I'll hit play. Let's refresh some ideas here.
I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me. Suspending my candidacy is a heart-rending decision for me, but I'm convinced that it's the best hope for ending the Ukraine war and ending the chronic disease epidemic that is eroding our nation's vitality from the inside, and for finally protecting free speech.
Do you think that they're trying to make us fat, lazy, and sick on purpose?
Uh, it's our policies. It's absolutely our policies. The way we have things set up. First of all the pesticides, we need to stop. We need to stop that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, everybody's getting cancer." Yeah. Yeah, our food absorbs it and then we eat it. Our animals eat it. I
Mhm.
mean, we're literally killing our land and our water with it because it
Yeah.
gets into our groundwater. I mean, just enough is enough. And then on top of it, you've got you
Hold on.
know, the
Side note.
the
At my church the other day, there was only like we had people gone for a missions trip and stuff, and they have prayer requests on Wednesday nights, and out of I would say the 30 prayer requests that were given, 18 were people who found out that they had cancer.
yeah,
18 in my small congregation. It's just ridiculous. And so what do they gain by making us fat, lazy, and dead? These chronic illnesses and things like that. They're
well,
selling off our land, they're replacing us with immigrants, and they're making us fat, lazy, and dead.
the other thing is that you can't patent anything from nature. It has to be a chemical. And that is true of of that's why our FDA is there. Um, is so people can put patents through from medications to anything else. We won't do anything that's naturally good for us. We rely on chemicals, and it's a problem. They won't seek out, they talk about, saving the rainforest and all the cures are in the rainforest. They want to go find those cures, those all natural cures, and then copy them the best they can with chemicals. They're not out there really trying to save the plants and the animals in the rainforest. They're trying to preserve it so they can find a cure, not to use the cure, and then come up with a chemical cure. Or not even a cure, but a Band-Aid because they don't make money curing people.
Yeah. And then, so just going to bring up something that we've kind of talked about in the past. On top of all of the pesticides and all of the chemicals that they put in our food and all of the things, the farms that have not sold out to the Chinese, by the way, the farms that haven't been sold out to the Chinese, we have Norfolk Southern driving trains through them, dumping chemicals left and right. Have you seen how many train derailments there's been?
Yeah.
Always next to farmland, always in rural America, always, always, always destroying entire little towns that are either, the suburbs and, these farming communities. And then what? They don't even shut down the farms. They still let these farmers do their thing. But now you've just contaminated all of their ground. And now we're
Mhm.
selling all these I mean, you look in Ohio to where the train derailment happened near me, and that stuff was all getting washed straight down the Mississippi River, is what Seal mentioned. Straight down all the rivers, all the way down, like, and it's just disgusting. They're just literally destroying our country. And so, what do you gain by destroying our country? What do you gain by making us fat, lazy, and stupid? And then you got to look at, okay, so if it's the corporations, if it's the people with money
It's money.
controlling all this, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
BC said after the train incident, Trump was the only one who wanted to come Ohio, which says a lot to me. But they sat there and fake drank water to try to tell people it was safe while they were bleeding from every orifice on their body if they washed their clothes in the stuff and bleeding from their bums. Like it's just disgusting. And then we're gonna be like, oh, we'll still we'll still sell all the things. The people in charge are not for we the people. Yeah, so what is their end game? That's what I'm getting at. So it's not just our country that's going through this. This is what scares me because it's not just America. It's Australia. It's the UK. It's everywhere. It's everywhere right now. And so who are the powers that be? And if you have all the money in the world and no slaves to work for you anymore because you've made us all fat, lazy, and stupid, what do you gain? I don't know. Sorry, that just
It means somebody can come in and take us over. That's what that
but it's
means.
so okay, so take us over. So who is it though? Who is coming to take us over?
That's a good question.
Who is it? Is it the Chinese? Is
I
it
don't know.
the Russians? Is it like who is the who? I mean, who is in charge? Who is controlling this? Who is taking over Ukraine? Who is taking or not Ukraine? Who is taking over Europe? Because the UK is going through very similar things is what we are. And we don't see it because we don't see the UK news. But if you ask people on TikTok, whoa, gotta ban that. Or on Instagram, these different platforms, like who is it? Who is behind this one world government type situation? And what do they gain from all of it? The powers that be. Their end game is money. It's all about money. So I was getting ready to say this. They only want 500 million people on Earth total. This is complete and total conspiracy theory. Where's my conspiracy theory cat, guys? Get the conspiracy cat. Do you guys remember whenever I did that video about the Georgia Guidestones?
Mm, no.
So I did a video about the Georgia Guidestones probably, I don't know, a little bit over a year ago. And one of the things that those Georgia Guidestones says is about, how to get us down to like what to do after the world or
Oh
the end of the world or
yeah.
whatever. And it was like
Yeah.
500,000 or 500 million people. I can't remember. And so is that what are they working towards that? Are they trying to get that down? I don't know. But they have taken the Georgia Guidestones down since. They're no longer there.
Didn't somebody blow them up?
So they say that they were heavily damaged and that they had to be removed because they were blown up. But so conspiracy theories say that the person who put them up, that there was some type of time capsule below them. And so basically that the person allegedly blew them up and needed to get whatever time capsule was in it underneath. So the inscription read that they wanted to maintain humanity under 500,000 in perpetual or 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. They wanted to guide reproduction wisely, improve fitness and diversity, unite humanity with a living new language. They wanted to rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things to be tempered with reason. They wanted to protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. They wanted to let all nations rule internally, resolving internal disputes in world court. And they wanted to avoid petty laws and useless officials. They want to balance personal rights with social duties, prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite, and be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature.
I object to their wise baby making there. Because let me tell you, um, my family I think all of us were birth control fails, except for my
Mhm.
daughter. My daughter was just, irresponsibility. But, everybody else was a birth control fail. I myself was born with an IUD in me that had to be surgically removed.
Mhm.
I say there is no way to control that unless you just don't go near anybody. That's what you need
So
to do.
I agree, but I don't. We are seeing some of the largest uprises in women with infertility issues that we have ever seen.
Oh,
And I really
yeah,
think
that's
that
our chemicals. That's
that's
all
what I
the
was going to say.
chemicals we're putting
All the
in. That's in our
chemicals and
food.
the birth control and not
Yeah,
birth control, but the vaccines even. Like I think that
yeah.
everything it leads to that the fertility issues that we're having in this country. And then the people who don't have fertility issues, they're trying to convince you that the best thing that you could do so that you can live your life how you want to live it and be you and be free and not have obligations and not have issues and be able to just, do your thing whenever you want, that the best thing that you could do if you get pregnant would be to abort the baby, because they also don't want you to put it up for adoption because they just don't want another person to exist, and that's how I really truly feel about it, and I know people who have gotten abortions, and I don't hate them for it, but one of the biggest reasons, one of my really close friends, she got an abortion because she wanted to be able to, if she wanted to go to dinner with her boyfriend, to be able to get up and go to dinner with her boyfriend. She watched me have to constantly get kids ready and like the fact that we can't go on vacations, we can't just do whatever we want to do. And so she decided to get an abortion because she wants to be able to do whatever she wanted to do. And it's like, you know, but I will
My
tell you that,
children refuse to have children. They say they
yeah,
can't afford them.
and I totally understand that outlook. But I will tell you that, 4 years down the road, now they're trying to get pregnant and she's having a lot of trouble. And it's because she had had that abortion and she regrets making that decision. And so I don't know. It's one of those things that I think shouldn't be done without a lot of counseling and stuff like that. But you look at, if they're really trying to go down to 500 million people, do you know how many people have to be fat, lazy, and stupid and die before then? It's a lot of people to go bye-byes.
Yep.
So, all right, let me hit play.
I feel a moral obligation to use this opportunity to save millions of American children, above all things. In case some of you don't realize how dire the condition is, our children's health and chronic disease in general, I would urge you to view Dr. Carlson's recent interview with Callie Means and his sister, Dr. Casey Means, who is the top graduate of her class at Stanford Medical School. This is an issue that affects all of us far more directly and urgently than any culture war issue and all the other issues that we obsess on and that are tearing apart our country. This is the most important issue. Therefore, it has the potential to bring us together. So let me share a little bit about why I believe it's so urgent. Today, 2/3, we spend more on healthcare than any country on earth, twice what they pay in Europe. And yet we have the worst health outcomes of any nation in the world. We're about 79th in health outcomes behind Costa Rica and Nicaragua and Mongolia and other countries. Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. And during the COVID epidemic, we had the highest body count of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And CDC says that's because we are the sickest people on earth. We have the highest chronic disease rate on earth. And the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So these were people who had immune system collapse, who had mitochondrial dysfunction. And no other country has anything like this. 2/3 of American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues. 50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 66%. In America, 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese, and 50% of our children. 120 years ago, when somebody was obese, they were sent to the circus. There were case reports done about them. Obesity was almost unknown. In Japan, the childhood obesity rate is 3% compared to 50% here. Half of Americans have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. When my uncle was president, I was a boy. juvenile diabetes was effectively non-existent. A typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes during his entire career, a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And the mitochondrial disorder that caused diabetes also causing Alzheimer's, which is now classified as diabetes. And it's costing this country more than our military budget every year. There's been an explosion of neurological illnesses that I never saw as a kid: ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, Tourette's syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism. In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500. Now, autism rates in kids are 1 in 36, according to CDC nationally. No.
And I would argue that it's probably higher than that. I
Yeah.
am currently the parent of a child who has 3 chronic illnesses. 3. And it's been one of the biggest struggles. And it all started whenever I took her off of breast milk and started supplementing whenever I went back to work. That's whenever everything went downhill. And you got to ask yourself, so what happened? What changed? You know? Let's talk
That's
about
the
food. Yeah. And I mean, and I sit here, I have chronic hypertension. I'm obese. You know what I mean? Like there's
right.
different things. And so it's how do we get better? How do we get better? You know? And so if there's a way to make healthy food affordable and to make it so that people 67 did he say 67% of kids are obese? Is that what he said? I can't
I didn't
remember the
hear
number
it.
he said. But that's insane to me. Why? Oh, no, I can't do mushrooms. I'm sorry, lioness. We can talk about healthy food. We can talk about, I mean, so you got to eat fresh, right? Plant your own gardens, different things like that. But if you're planting your own gardens and you're using seeds that came from the same stuff that was already polluted, is it still polluted like by being passed down through the seeds, I wonder? Like I don't know how that works. And then so if you live in an area that has had a train derail, 66% chronic illness. Thank you, lioness. I don't know. How can you do it? You know, how can you eat healthy? This is something we were talking about the cost of beef the other day. It's gone up so high for beef.
It's like $50 a steak here right
Yeah,
now.
it's insane. It's insane. So people turn to the processed foods, they turn to the boxed meals. You know, I was always taught through like dietitians and different things like that because I've been trying to lose weight my whole entire life, basically. You know, you stay on that outer rim of the grocery store. You don't go to the middle aisles. You just stay on the outer rim.
Right?
You know how freaking expensive that outer rim is whenever you're feeding a family of 5 and
Yeah.
whenever one of your children is non-dairy? So you have to buy even more expensive special foods. Like I thought they're pushed to make us eat soy everything and they're pushed to make us vegans and rely on plants and I was hoping that that was going to be like I was like, "Oh great, you know, maybe her foods will be cheaper." No, for freaking 16 slices of cheese, it's $8 for her type of cheese. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, buy local cow. That's and it's great. Get organic plants, start there. It's in the soil though, like BC said. It's literally in the soil in some of these areas. I don't live next to a train derailment, but guess what? They just made a coal mine into my backyard. And I'm not against coal, don't get me wrong. We need it. But I don't know. I just don't know how we win. Casey, I wanted to tell you, thank you so much for joining the sleuth family, by the way. I know I put up the little graphic and stuff like that. But thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you here. You're here just feeding the puppies. I don't know. But so far, his speech, I mean, it's just blowing me away because this is what's important. And so this is the guy who's dropping out of the race in 10 states. But we have Kamala, like whenever she did her speech, there was none of this.
Uh-uh.
And he's dropping out. So like what the heck? I'm not touching poop. I'm sorry, lioness.
Yeah, they basically turned around and used the law to election hamper again. And that's been going on for a while, especially with the third party candidates.
Right.
That's been going on for a while. And the
You
people
you
doing the debates, I'm sorry, there's
so
some
biased.
people in charge of that that need to be hit with treason charges
I
for
honestly goodness
messing with
wish
our
that they would
elections.
I wish they would do like debates with like a TikTok creator or a YouTube creator, or you know what I mean? Not one of these organizations, but you know the Democrats would never agree to something like that. There's no way. But could you imagine if like just somebody like you or I was running the debate instead of freaking them pushing towards one party or the other, just actually having a free flow of ideas uncensored and just have it actually happen? Yeah, it also spreads miles and miles through the air. I know, BC, I'm within the hazard zone of the last that derailment. I'm within that hazard zone. We talked about that before. He's gonna be in
I
charge.
think half the
Hi,
country
Red
is
Rock.
in the hazard zone.
I know. It's all the way up to Canada by air,
Yeah, it's so bad.
and it's happened so many times since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the train crashes have been purposeful too. I'm looking forward to when Veloma comes back completely because I know she has a lot of things she wants to tell us. She's been going through behind the scenes with all this stuff with Norfolk Southern. So, anyways, let's hit play.
Nobody's talking about this. 1 in every 22 kids in California has autism. And this is a crisis that 77% of our kids are too disabled to serve in the United States military. What is happening to our country? And why isn't this in the headlines every single day? There's nobody else in the world that is experiencing this. This is only happening in America. About 18%. And by the way, you know, there has been no change in diagnosis, which the industry sometimes like to say. There has been no change in screening. This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22. Why are we letting this happen? Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen to them? About 18% of American teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late stage alcoholics who are elderly. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs. So what's causing this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. First, and the worst, is ultra-processed food. About 70% of American children's diet is ultra-processed. That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of them formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans aren't biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous in American processed foods. The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine, in our environment. Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors. America's puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900. Our country has the earliest puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning all of our children and our adults. Considering the grievous human cause of this tragic epidemic of chronic disease, it seems almost crass to mention the damage it does to our economy. But I'll say it is crippling the nation's finances. When my uncle was president, our country spent $0 on chronic disease. Today, government healthcare spending is almost all for chronic disease, and it's double the military budget. And it is the fastest growing budget item in the federal budget. Chronic disease costs more to the economy as a whole, costs at least $4 trillion, 5 times our military budget. And that's a 20% drag on everything we do and everything we aspire to. Poor and minority communities suffer disproportionately. People who worry about DEI or about bigotry of any kind, this dwarfs anything. We are poisoning the poor. We are systematically poisoning minorities across this country. Industry lobbyists have made sure that most of the food stamp lunch program, about 70% of food stamps and about 70 or 77% of school lunches are processed foods. There's no vegetables. There's nothing that you would want to eat. We are just poisoning the poor citizens, and that's why they have the highest chronic disease burden of anybody, any demographic in our country, and the highest in the world. The same food industry lobbied to make sure that nearly all agricultural subsidies go to commodity crops that are the feedstock of processed food industry. These policies are destroying small farms and they're destroying our soils. We give about, I think, 8 times as much in subsidies to tobacco than we do to fruits and vegetables. It makes no sense. We want a healthy country. The good news is that we can change all this. We can change it very, very quickly. America can get healthy again. To do that, we need to do 3 things. First, we need to root out the corruption in our health agencies. Second, we need to change incentives in our healthcare system. And third, we need to inspire Americans to get healthy again. 80% of NIH grants go to people who have conflicts of interest. These are the people, virtually everybody who sits, Joe Biden just appointed a new panel to NIH to decide the food recommendations. And they're all people who are from the industry. They're all people who are from the processed food companies. They're deciding what Americans, here is healthy. And the recommendations on the food pyramid and what goes to our school lunch programs, what go to the program, the Swiss program, the food stamp programs. They're all corrupted and conflicted individuals. These agencies, the FDA, USDA, and CDC, all of them are controlled by giant for-profit corporations. 75% of the FDA's funding doesn't come from taxpayer, it comes from pharma. And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies with President Trump's backing. I'm going to change that. We're going to staff these agencies with honest scientists and doctors who are free from industry funding. We're going to make sure the decisions of consumers, doctors, and patients are informed by unbiased science. A sick child is the best thing for the pharmaceutical industry. When American children or adults get sick with a chronic condition, they're put on medication for their entire life. Imagine what will happen when Medicare starts paying for Ozempic, which costs $1,500 a month, and it's being recommended for children as young as 6, all for a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago. And 74% of Americans are obese. The cost, if all of them took their Ozempic prescription, is $3 trillion a year. This is a drug that is made by Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe. It's a Danish company, and the Danish government does not recommend it. It recommends change in diet to treat obesity and exercise. And in our country, the recommendation now is for Ozempic to children at age 6. Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe, and virtually its entire value is based upon its projections of what it's going to sell, of the Ozempic it's going to sell to America. And we have the food lobbyists have a bill in front of Congress today that is backed by the White House, backed by Vice President Harris and President Biden to allow this to happen. This $3 trillion cost that is going to bankrupt our country. For a fraction of that amount, we could buy organic food for every American family, 3 meals a day, and eliminate diabetes altogether. We're going to bring healthy food back to school lunches.
So BC is asking about this, and so I did just kind of Google, and it says the top 4 It says watch out for these toxic food additives. So it's monosodium glutamate, aka MSG. It's added to many flavored foods. It antagonizes your pancreas into pouring out more insulin. It's a hormonal cascade that makes you feel hungrier. It's been linked to diabetes and obesity and is even considered an excitotoxin, which can cause brain cells to get overexcited and then fire uncontrollably, potentially leading to cell death. Refined flour, if it says refined flour on it, it refers to a modification process in which the bran and germ are removed, allowing products to stay on the shelves longer, but it also removes the naturally occurring vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber. So, refined flour, which is mainly white flour, jacks up your blood sugar levels fast, spiking your insulin levels and then making them crash. This reaction makes you hungrier very quickly, which explains why you may feel like eating again soon after having a bagel or a slice of toast. Refined sugar, which is white sugar that works on the body in a very similar way to refined flour. It sends your blood sugar sky high and then makes it crash a short time later, intensifying your craving for sugar. Once you start eating it, it can be difficult to stop. Sugar can make you feel briefly high, as in on a drug, and creates a spark of energy in your body because of the dopamine release that it brings. Particularly vile form of refined sugar is high fructose corn syrup laced in sodas, commercial juices, and other beverages, as well as packaged foods. It messes up your normal metabolism. Studies have found this additive slows down the release of leptin or the I'm full hormone. And then, of course, gluten, which is a protein wheat that is processed in foods. It could be highly inflammatory in certain groups of people because of its sugar like properties when refined. It's also a gut irritant. Good rule of thumb is to avoid gluten containing products for a month and see how you feel, whether you are in better control of your cravings. So that's just 4. So it says polyphenols are a type of nutrient that contain health promoting properties. They are important for clearing out your bloodstream and the toxins. They are key to controlling hunger and cravings for the unhealthy additive filled foods. So it says some of the favorite foods for high polyphenol is avocados, berries, broccoli, cherries, chili peppers, citrus fruits, coffee, flax seeds, dark chocolate, garlic, uh, mangoes, nuts, olives, onions, oregano, pumpkin, spinach, green tea. So that's just one article. But again, I don't know if I would use Google necessarily as a resource. Um, let's be honest, they do own Google as well. And so are you going to really find everything? So this is the 12 worst food additives. So nitrates, potassium bromate, profile. Yeah, I don't know. I can send this to you though, BC. Found in many bath and body products and some foods. If it can go in my bath and body, I'm not sure how I feel about it being in my food. So potato chips and preserved meats, any type of food preservative. This is another one that's in food preservatives, bread, cereal, sports drinks, secret flavoring ingredients.
This is why other countries won't take our food.
Yeah. Artificial colors, butter flavoring, and microwave popcorn. Not microwave popcorn, you monsters. I'm just kidding. Oh man, aluminum. I knew this one. Many processed foods have aluminum in them, which is associated with Alzheimer's and neurological disorders. Fun fact, I was talking to my husband about this the other day about needing to switch to a more unprocessed diet, not because of me being overweight, which is also a good reason to do it, but let me see if I can find the article I sent him. So one of the chronic diseases that my daughter has is actually made worse, I found out, by a bunch of the preservatives that are inside of some of these foods.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I was sitting here and I was researching it because she has been having issues. Like, her sensory processing disorder is one of those things where sometimes she's very, very okay, and then other times she's just all of a sudden not. And so I was kind of trying to research into that a little bit and find out, what we could do. And I know that there are people who have children with autism that whenever they go to an all natural diet, that it does help. And so I was talking to him about that. And I always have to like back up everything that I tell him with research because otherwise he just does not want to listen to me. And so I was showing him the different research I did, but fun fact, the other thing that she has is a gene duplication on one of her genes we had found out while they were testing her. And the gene duplication that my daughter has um, actually also reacts terribly to the one thing. And all of that combined, so her gene duplication is what leads to some things, and then her sensory processing disorder leads to other things, and then she also has like muscle issues, and she's a whole story. But so I'm thinking to myself, if we can get her on an all natural diet and we aren't giving her anything with preservatives, because we're already halfway there because most things inside of grocery stores have milk product in them. And so we had switched over to like vegan alternatives of a lot of the things, but like I said, they're a bajillion dollars for the vegan alternative. And so if we can just get away from it completely and just feed her all natural foods, I think we're going to be about a million times further ahead. But you don't think about some of the stuff being an issue. Our meats are not allowed in Europe. That's crazy. Oh, see, some radical vegan groups say we should be eating bugs instead of meat. I'm not okay with that. Our bodies cannot digest bugs. Bugs are very toxic for human. The microwave changes the composition of food to poison. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. All right, we only got like
So
6
what was that about microwave popcorn?
They put an additive in it that makes it very, very bad. Let me see which one it was. Hold on.
Man.
Butter flavoring and I know, because like even with Weight Watchers and stuff like that, they tell you that like get a low fat popcorn because it's like more filling than like a bag of chips would be, but way less calories.
Hmm.
Anyways, so butter flavoring and microwave popcorn flavoring and yogurt and cheese and maple. It's associated with bronchiolitis. I don't know what it's an irreversible respiratory illness. I'm gonna put this word in the chat because I don't know how to say it.
Oh, as an ex-smoker, I need that.
Your son has
Yeah.
severe ADHD with sensory processing disorder. We took him off all dyes and you're buying more whole foods or making things from home at scratch. He's a different kid in many ways. And so the issue with this is we are still a paycheck to paycheck family. And so moving her to an unprocessed diet completely, it's all, I hate to say this, but it's expensive, right?
It is.
And so this is something we have to do in like baby steps because like I said, feeding a family of 5 without a garden, we didn't plant a garden this year because I was cautious because of the stupid coal mine being built behind our house. And they're already like, "Oh, you don't have a well, do you? Because don't drink it no more." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks. That's cool." So what happens to my plants that I plant? And so we didn't do a farm this year because I'm like so scared of what's going to be in the garden.
Do it
You
in
know what I mean?
pots.
Huh?
Do it in
Well,
pots.
so that's what we're gonna do. Like, and we're gonna do a raised, like potted
Yeah.
type of thing, which is great. But we do have an apple tree. Like my mother-in-law has apples and pears and things like that. We already do like our own homemade applesauce and things like that. But to completely transition. It's definitely going to take time to transition to this, not processed anything type of thing. So, yeah, hormones at dairy farms and feed yards have been banned in the UK. I can believe that. And I will say that one of my biggest issues is milk. I am addicted to drinking milk. I honest to goodness am. And it's gotten better because I used to drink like insane amounts of milk. But I've gotten much, much better with it now. I just don't drink it at all, really.
I drink a lot of milk. It helps with hot flashes.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
I'm like one of those people, like I like something salty, but I have to have something sweet with it. And then if I have something sweet, I have to have something with milk in it. And so it's a whole process for me. And it, if that's where all the hormones and the bad things are, it's probably what's killing me. We'll be good though. Anyways, let's do this. Let's hit play.
We're going to stop subsidizing the worst foods with our agricultural subsidies. We're going to get toxic chemicals out of our food. We're going to reform the entire food system. And for that, we need new leadership in Washington. Because unfortunately, both the Democrats and the Republican parties are in cahoots with the big food producers, big pharma and big ag, which are among the DNC's major donors. Vice President Harris has expressed no interest in addressing this issue. 4 more years of Democratic rule will complete the consolidation of corporate and neocon power, and our children will be the ones who suffer most. I got involved with chronic disease 20 years ago, not because I chose to or wanted to. It was essentially thrust upon me. It was an issue that should have been central to the environmental movement. I was a central leader at that time, but it was widely ignored by all the institutions, including the NGOs, who should have been protecting our kids against toxins. It was an orphaned issue, and I had a weakness for orphans. I watched generations of children get sicker and sicker. I had 11 siblings, and I had 7 kids myself. I was conscious of what was happening in their classrooms and to their friends, and I watched these sick kids, these damaged kids. In that generation, almost all of them are damaged. And nobody in power seemed to care or to even notice. For 19 years, I prayed every morning that God would put me in a position to end this calamity. The chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with ending censorship in the Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump. This decision is agonizing for me because of the difficulties it causes my wife and my children and my friends. But I have the certainty that this is what I've meant to do. And that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. If I'm given the chance to fix the chronic disease crisis and reform our food production, I promise that within 2 years, we will watch chronic disease burden lift dramatically. We will make Americans healthy again. Within 4 years, America will be a healthy country. We will be stronger, more resilient, more optimistic, and happier. I won't fail in doing this. Ultimately, the future, however it happens, is in God's hands and in the hands of the American voters and those of President Trump. If President Trump is elected and honors his word, the vast burden of chronic disease that now demoralizes and bankrupts the country will disappear. This is a spiritual journey for me. I reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health? I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After 8 years of President Harris, any opportunity for me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, his biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support this objective. My joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. That's why I launched my campaign.
Do you think we can do that? Choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. Like,
No,
that's
this
a
country is
powerful
too
statement.
woke.
Mm, I don't know. I don't know. It's very, very, very powerful
It
that
is.
what he just said there.
It
And
is.
he's pulling out a lot of big punches against big pharma and things like that, and I really do hope that with him backing Trump and getting into this, what I see whenever I'm watching this, I see a man who genuinely cares about the future of this country, which is our children. He genuinely cares about more than just him winning or losing the ticket. He genuinely cares about making sure that he's doing the right thing by the children in this nation. And that's huge to me. Very huge to me. We need to replace all of our top people in the FDA, CDC, government. And then we wonder why they tried to assassinate Trump. And I'm surprised RFK lived this long with something like this. I mean, this is why they've been shadow banning him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because could you imagine if every person with a child heard this speech?
Yeah, and the sad thing, I bet hardly anybody watched it.
Yeah. Yep. Let me see how many views are on this one. So only 752,000 on Fox 4. They did him so dirty. Let me see. Let me look it up. Oh wait, I don't want to do it on this one because I don't want to like lose my RFK. So 662,000 on the Associated Press, 725,000 on Fox Dallas. Why is this not millions? Of course, I guess that's the same reason why we only have 10 people in here tonight. You know what I mean? People don't care. He's not the
Yeah,
popular candidate.
that's right. He ran as an independent, and that's been the problem.
798,000 on Asmongold, 190,000 on New York Post. It's like sad. Like this is horrible. Oh, this Fox News has 1 million. This other one. So maybe that was like a smaller Fox News channel, but still 1 million. That's not enough. Let me see. I don't even see it on like NBC. They have NBC has a short up, but I don't see like the full speech. Nothing on CNN.
Yeah.
They did. They shadow banned even this speech. Of course they would, though. I mean, he's pretty much attacking them throughout this whole speech and everything that they stand for. CBS did a Kamala Harris reaction to it. No, there's like nothing. They did. They completely shadow banned him. And he said they were there, you know? So we're looking at maybe 3 million votes total. You agree he does. The few times he was talking about our kids, I thought he was going to tear up. Yeah, you love his passion for our kids. That's huge. You can still vote for him. Your state was first to put him on the ballot, but yeah, it always voted red. I don't know. I think I think he's asking people to back Trump, and I think that matters. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think him saying like, "Listen, I'm gonna be on his ticket. If he follows through with what he's saying, I'm gonna get to do what I'm passionate about, which is helping our kids." Then we need to help that happen. You know what I mean? We need to make sure that the kids get put first. And again, it's nothing against Harris, but what's Harris doing for our children? I know what she's doing for illegal immigrants. I know what she's doing for people who have skated across the border. I've seen that.
Yeah.
But what are we doing for American children? The
Nothing.
who actually live in this country?
Nothing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait. They just sent me a letter in the mail. We're getting $120 in food stamps for my son for being a child who is of public school age. Pennsylvania has been giving out $120 for the summer months. It comes sometime between September and October. We should get that. And it's for the months of, I think it was like June, July, and August. $120. Well, thank you. We'll just hand them a little bit of free cash, right? And that's literally just for being a school-aged person in this state. But where is that? CNN started to stream it, but cut away when he began to slam the Dems. He was telling the truth. He absolutely was.
Yep.
They started to stream it, but then shut it down.
Yep.
That's crazy to me,
That's
Ross.
exactly what I'm saying about the lack of freedom of press anymore, that the press has become a monopoly, and that,
Hmm.
I mean, if you start looking and if you follow the shell corporations, it goes someplace where they're all basically owned by
Yeah,
a government corporation, and you're not going to like it. And
yeah.
I mean, it's just that simple.
That's crazy. B. Tim, I want to know because I know that you're a Democrat and I know that you're in other places right now and probably listening on the side. But I'm curious, did you ever watch RFK's speech? Did you watch RFK's speech yet? Yeah, talk about bias and censoring.
Yeah, it's gross.
I don't understand. I don't understand how we got to this point though, where like as a nation we're just so driven by hate and making sure that two sides can never work together. They literally divide us so much and then anything that's good for us, they just censor it. He might not be listening anymore. Beat him. Beat him. Paging Tomato Tim.
He needs to panel hop his ass on up here. That's what he needs to do.
Right? I still can't believe they've started to stream it, but then shut it down. All right, let me do the last minute. I'm gonna try not to have to pause it again.
To unify America. My dad and uncle made such an enduring mark on the character of our nation, not so much because of any particular policies that they promoted, but because they were able to inspire profound love for our country and to fortify our sense of ourselves as a national community held together by ideals. They were able to put their love into the intentions and hearts of ordinary Americans and to unify a national populist movement of Americans, Blacks and whites, Hispanics, urban and rural Americans. They inspired affection and love and high hopes and a culture of kindness that continue to radiate among Americans from their memory. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I will appeal to the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats. The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. If we all unite around that issue now, we can finally give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, wow.
Tonight, I'm very pleased to welcome a man who has been an incredible champion.
You want to watch this next? It's only 12 minutes. It's them
Yeah.
doing their speech together. Yeah, calling B Tim. If it doesn't fit their agenda, they won't show it. Completely goes against what our country stands for. I don't know.
Champion for so many of these values that we all share, and we've shared them for a long time. I don't think too many of you people have heard of him. He's very low key. He's a very low key person, but he's highly respected. He is a great person. I've known him for so long. For the past 16 months, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Trying to get me a copyright strike there, Trump. What you doing? Can't be playing music. That was another thing that they said about the DNC about they kept playing like really popular songs anytime like people were speaking so that you couldn't air it anywhere else without getting copyright struck. Anyways, what we got? Ugh, still music.
For the past 16 months, Bobby has run an extraordinary campaign for President of the United States. I know, because he also went after me a couple of times. I didn't like it. And I mean this sincerely. Had he been allowed to enter the Democrat primary, he would have easily beaten Joe Biden, but they wouldn't let him in.
I agree with that.
They put
I
up
do
rules.
too.
I've never seen rules like he had to have 65% of the vote in order to run, little things like that. His candidacy has inspired millions and millions of Americans, raised critical issues that have been too long ignored in this country, and brought together people from across the political spectrum in a positive campaign grounded in the American values of his father, Robert Kennedy, a great man, and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy. And I know that they are looking down right now, and they are very, very proud of Bobby. I'm proud of Bobby. You want to know the truth?
Always like the name Bobby. Maybe that's why.
And I don't think I've ever introduced anyone that got applause like he just got. I must tell you, I don't think it's true. I don't think I've ever introduced anybody that got applause like that. It's amazing. It's true. Amazing. Soon after I was, I can't even believe I have to say this, nearly assassinated in Pennsylvania last month, Bobby called me to express his best wishes. He knows firsthand the risks incurred by leaders who stand up to the corrupt political establishment. When you stand up, you bring on some trouble for yourself, but you have to do what's right. You have to do what's right for the country. I will tell you, we are both in this to do what's right for the country. That's one thing I can tell you. He lost his father and uncle in service.
Little John is a rapper lioness. B. Tim, now that you're here, I asked you a question about the RFK speech. Did you watch that by chance? I'm curious because I know you're a Democrat, and so I'm curious if you had actually seen that speech or no.
To our country, and Bobby himself was subject to repeated threats to his safety during the course of his campaign while being denied protection by the Harris-Biden administration. And this is a tribute in honor of Bobby. I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts. And they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And they will also conduct a rigorous review of the attack last month. But I tell you, I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to do that. And I also want to salute Bobby's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more. Millions and millions of Americans who want clean air, clean water, and a healthy nation have concerns about toxins in our environment and pesticides in our food. That's why today I'm repeating my pledge to establish a panel of top experts working with Bobby to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and many more. We want every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life. So I just want to ask Bobby to speak for a little while. I'll stand aside. I'm going to stand aside. But I can only tell you, I've known him a long time. We've been a little bit on the opposite side of the equation, but I will say this, he is a brilliant, I still think of him as young. He's not that young. I always call him young, but he's not that young. But he is a phenomenal person, a phenomenal man who loves the people of this country as much as anybody can love the people of this country. So, Bobby, please say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you. Now, a few hours after the assassination attempt at Butler, I got a call from a safe food advocate named Kelly Means, who's been fighting for many years to try to end the corruption at CDC and FDA and USDA. And these institutions, these regulatory agencies are actually run by the big food processing companies, the big ag and the chemical companies that they're supposed to regulate. And he said to me that he'd been advising me for many years and on my campaign. And he told me that night that he was also advising President Trump. And he asked if I would talk to President Trump. And I said, of course. And about a few minutes later, I got a call from the president. And we talked. We had a very good talk. And then he invited me to come see him the next day. And I went to Minneapolis and saw him. We met again a couple of weeks later in Florida. And we talked about, not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. Our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. Don't you want healthy children? And don't you want the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? And that's what President Trump told me that he wanted. He also told me that he wanted to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy. He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States. And the safest, the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country. And don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country? And he told me that he wanted to end the censorship because the whole basis of American democracy is the free flow of information. And we know that a government that can silence its opponents has license for any kind of atrocity. And can you think of any time that you can look back in history and say that the people who were censoring were the good guys? They're always the bad guys, because it's always the first step down that slippery slope to totalitarianism. And don't you want a president who's going to protect America's freedoms? And who is going to protect us against totalitarianism? And I want to ask you again, don't you want a safe environment for your children? Don't you want to know that the food that you're feeding them is not filled with chemicals that are going to give them cancer and chronic disease? And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? Thank you all very, very much, and God bless you, and God bless America.
You'll like him, B Tim. Go back and listen to him. Go back and listen to the full speech where he drops out. You can either listen to it on the link that I was using. It hasn't had enough views. I mean, it's under, I would say under 2 million that have watched it, and it's really freaking good. But he completely destroys like the Democratic Party in this speech. So buckle your pants, because it's gonna be a ride. But he's all for the children and natural eating and things like that. And that's why I think that you're gonna agree with some of the stuff that he said. And because you're always pushing for us all to eat all of the weird vegan type stuff minus the bugs. So, but anyways, um so it's like midnight and I have church in the morning. So we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm sorry I kept you up so late in the bushes. I know you're not as late as I am, but I know it's definitely past your bedtime. I guess we're going to have to prepare like whenever these speeches are around 45 minutes long that it's going to take us like 2 hours because I talk so much. So, keep that in mind. I appreciate those of you guys who came in to listen, even though it's politics and even though all the drama in the YouTube streets is going on. Um, but I love you guys so much. Casey, thank you again for becoming a member here. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your support for the Sleuth family. Um, I am going to check real quick before we get off because I do think that oh my goodness, where's my thought process right now? I do think that Ryan still has not been found, and so I just want to double check that they are still searching for him. So give me 1 second.
Oh, that poor baby.
I'm really scared for him.
Yeah.
So it's dark out there. The last video that was put up by the reporter is Equisearch going into another one of the reservoirs. There's so many reservoirs right by his house,
Uh,
searching for him, and he still has not been found at this point. So if you guys missed that video, I did do that video about an hour or so ago. It's real short, 15 minutes. Not an hour ago. I guess it would be about 4 hours ago now. But it's a real short video. And just keep his family in prayers, his mom and his family, and the searchers that are out there so that they can hopefully locate him. And gosh, I mean, just pray that he can be found safe. So yeah, I can't brain. Yeah, you have to get up early too. So thank you, Seal, for coming up earlier. I appreciate you hanging out as long as you did, and thank you in the bushes for sticking by me through the whole live. Appreciate it.
you're
Any
welcome.
final remarks?
No, nobody be woke. That's all I can say. Nobody be woke.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got too. So see you guys in the morning. Bye.